All right, here we go. Happy New Year, HyperStream. Welcome to 2026. Did things a little out of order this year. Instead of trying to focus on getting everything done by New Year's Eve, I was able to put that energy into getting another stream done. We were able to do some Last LAN Standing on New Year's Day. So, of course, the New Year's recap is a little bit later this year. And also, I'm kind of following last year's format, in which I'm just going to record it offline. Makes it a lot easier. I can get it done that way without having to get everything configured for online. And then I can just upload it and call it a day. So, this is kind of like my last lingering thing for the holidays to get done and take out off the checklist, however that would work. But finally got some stuff done and wanted to go over that with you because this all wouldn't happen without you and all the support we've had over the last couple plus years. And man, we've had some good stuff happen this year. I did a little reviewing of the prior recaps, and I remember that I was not going to miss 2024. There was some rough challenges there, but I feel the opposite way because 2025 has been pretty solid. Had some challenges, but nothing that was hyper crazy. But 26 coming up, on the other hand, could be kind of another interesting one with some unknowns. But at least I can look back at 2025 and say, yeah, there's some pretty awesome stuff that happened. So I figure I'd go through that with you. Of course, one of the common things I always talk about is the numbers. I mean, kind of, it's an indication of growth. I mean, it's not necessarily an indication of interaction or conversion and stuff like that, but it's kind of one of the things that I can do to express appreciation, at least numerically. It can show that, hey, more people are tagging along, checking things out. And so we've had a little bit of an adjustment this year. So up until middle of 25, we were still doing four platforms. I kind of came to an informal decision to drop Pilled because we were really having some technical issues on a regular basis. So I wanted to try to see if alleviating one of the platforms would help. But also, one of the other things is I kind of came to the realization that if we're not able to monetize the platforms, I think it's great to be consistent across the board. That right now we don't have advertising on any of our streaming platforms right now. But the thing is, Pilled still, at its discretion, was able to do that. And I think the bigger thing that was frustrating about the ads was that there's still a lot of AI generated ads. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? We're gonna boil it down to the basics, and we've had growth all across the board. So on one hand, it's like I'm not factoring in the numbers from the Pilled audience, which was growing quite a bit, but eventually it kind of plateaued. It seemed like, well, there wasn't a lot of traffic coming from Pilled. So I just wanted to keep focusing on the ones that are growing and the ones that also didn't have ads. So Odyssey's been our number one since the beginning. So we went from 39 followers all the way up to 90, and I know we've already had a couple since I'm filming a couple days after New Year's. So it is actually got the highest record for the year. So that was like 2.3. And it's kind of interesting how both Twitch and YouTube were exact double in numbers from where we left off with January 1st of 25. So gone from 31 to 62 on Twitch. And the interesting thing is Twitch is still a continual battle with bots. I know some of those are kind of padded, but not much we can do about it. So I can't sit there and pick out which ones are which. But it's great to have a double or 2x in terms of growth there. And then on YouTube, YouTube's been a real interesting story because for those who've been around since the beginning, I've hated on YouTube and the algorithm and the platform a lot. So we are finally getting some traction on YouTube, and to see that double as well. And actually, YouTube has still had a micro surge since we did some stuff for New Year's, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more for our first official hyperstream for the year, or at least the first official rec room for the hyperstream. So we'll talk about that more. But thank you to everybody who's been checking things out. So those are just an indicator. It's not about the follows. There's not really about a prestige element to all this. It's, if anything, this is kind of like a chronicle of what it's been like to go from zero to who knows wherever we end up. Because if anything, for the big shooters out there, they're gonna be like, hey, that's some paltry numbers. But for those who are going to try to ever get into this, hopefully it's encouragement of how much you really got to put your time in. You got to be consistent. You got to be diligent, and eventually things will start moving. And then that's without doing with any kind of major social media presence, without a lot of money to throw at marketing to get people to see stuff if they wouldn't naturally do so. So as of right now, this is all organic. This is all either just through being online with a consistent basis, or having friends share things out, or word of mouth. So many of you have been part of that. So thank you for being along for the ride. So We've had a lot of things to try. I mean, we're coming up on almost the tail end of our third year for doing this, so we've made it past the first one, which is usually an easy make or break point for a lot of people. So the next goal is to try to get to all the way to year 5 to know if we've established everything or not. But we had some records happen. So Odyssey had a couple different months in which it had some record follow counts, and so I think it went from like March, April, and then all the way till December before we had another record. So Odyssey has had up to 13 new follows in a singular month, and that contributed, of course, in the same month to a record number of follows in the same month collectively across all the platforms, putting us at 20. So thank you again for that. So all the little thumbnails here might not be super easy to read, but it's just kind of a sampling of some of the things that surprisingly popped up out of nowhere, getting a lot of views. And of course, there's always the bean counters, the number crunchers, the analytics, the people that want to try to figure out what makes things work. How do you replicate success and how do you make it work? I don't have the answer to that, but I can look at certain things, and some things end up being more popular than others. Is it a matter of timing? Is it a matter of just a new influx of traffic? Hard to say. But I'll start with the white icons there on the left. So one of the most recent things that was just an absolute breakout was the unboxing video I did for Metal Slug Tactics, the Commanding Officer Edition. So as it shows that it was about a month ago, so it's been about 3 to 4 weeks, and that has got about, well, it looks like 170 views at the time I captured this. So up until this point, we've barely broken triple digits in viewership on anything other than, say, the Brick Bunker, maybe a few episodes there, and a couple of the strategy videos I did for Metal Slug Attack Reloaded. So it's mostly common that we're barely getting about 10 to 20 views. So to have something not only get into triple digits within a couple weeks, but also get there and keep going up until that point, it's crazy. So greatly appreciate that. That was a completely unknown, and I think that is around the time we've started to see a turning point on YouTube in terms of increase in traffic. So there will be more of that stuff to come, but it's just like some of that requires time still, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily seem like it's all that exciting, but apparently there's still a great interest in unboxing. I mean, and as from the style we got here, there's all kinds of collectibles hanging around. It's just a matter of trying to figure out, okay, what might seem interesting, and especially if there's something that hasn't yet had that initial tape or plastic removed from it. So there's all kinds of things that we'll probably still have in that regard. Same thing to be said for this Mech Warrior episode. So I don't know why episode 11 of season 2 popped off there on YouTube, but again, that was also leading into this time where we've started to see more traffic. So greatly appreciate the help there. And then even one of the Resident Evil episodes for doing Mercenaries mode kind of caught on a bit. And just for comparison, I did a couple figure unboxings recently, and yet those are not even in the same realm of interest apparently as video game unboxings. So I don't know what to make of that, but it's kind of interesting to do some comparisons. Then it's all across the board on our Odyssey support for views. Like, so there's a Metal Slug Tactics episode number 5. Yeah, I think it's number 5 there. And 81 views. That's almost been like unheard of over on Odyssey. We've gotten into 20s and 30s and occasionally 40s, but 80 out of nowhere. And that was also following some technical difficulties with trying to figure out how to get Odyssey's trending thing working in our favor again. But as you can see, we've had some other breakouts across a couple Tomb Raider episodes, one at 55. We did Steel Seed, that got to 48, and there was another Tomb Raider, I think, with 40, I think, that probably got covered up there. And one that I appreciate seeing is that when we have some of our one-off episodes for like Last LAN Standing, Cooperative Laboratory, those require more work and setup, so we don't get to do those very often. So to see one of those get like 55 views over there on Odyssey, greatly appreciated. So thank you to everybody who's checking that kind of stuff out. So definitely some highlights there. So here's a general snapshot of kind of the stuff that we've covered this year. And this is not even all inclusive because there's other titles I didn't even get. I figured already it's a crowded visual as it is, and I figure I'd just touch on them vocally if they're not represented here. But and also before I dive into the specifics of the games, I want people to know that this isn't necessarily about being a gaming stream. This is a lot about being, or I should say, making connections, because we're across the board in terms of like things with strategy and sci-fi. And the whole point is, regardless of people being gamers or not, the whole idea is we're trying to figure out if those of you out there have the same interests as us, because we're working on building a similar franchise, such that if you like some of the things that are already out there, whether they be AAA or less, you're gonna chances like the stuff that we're working on here too. So gaming just helps facilitate that process. So this is not necessarily to be a gung ho, guns blazing gaming channel. We would like to branch out to do more stuff, but right now, gaming is the most cost effective and most time effective way of having something to show for the time. Bundle that with the creative processes going on here, and then continue to help make connections. So, and we've gone through a lot of games, and some of it's starting to get we're starting to reach into some repeat territory for good reason. But we've also knocked some other things out. So early in the year, we took care of like kind of like our first pseudo season 2 via the Turtle Shredder's Revenge game. And that started to get to be a chore because we were really just kind of grinding out some survival mode to get colors unlocked. And I kid you not, Tomb Raider Remastered, that game has proven to be a chore unto itself. And I have not up until this point had a list of things that I would put as the worst games ever played. But Tomb Raider 2 and 3 definitely are on that list. And, it's going to be a challenge when and if we get back to a season 2 for that, because, of course, we did not even do a fulsome collection, and hidden run on there. So those are at least a couple things we knocked out this year. Also, one of the key things was we've been able to upgrade and get into the PlayStation 5 territory, and that was courtesy of some, I believe, holiday money last year from family and friends or something to that effect. And so that opened up the doorway for some other titles. There was only a couple things I was really looking to do next gen. But I think the one that tipped me over the edge was Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. Was not expecting that. So finally, once that got announced, I'm like, okay, well, there's a few things I'm looking for. So I finally took the plunge, and that opened up all kinds of other opportunities now, because Steel Seed was one of the new IPs that I was really looking forward to. So we had the opportunity to do Steel Seed this year, along with Ninja Gaiden. And also there was a PC title that I never really got a chance to get into called Bright Memory. And it's only a short game. We only got a couple episodes out of it, but it's really, really neat. It's got a sci-fi and Asian flair to it. And also, we're starting to get into some season 2 of past content. Now, I don't pick season 2s just because now I'll get a little repetitive on the content standpoint, unless there's something new or another kind of perspective or another completionist element to do. So now we finally had a chance to do Aiko's Choice for Shadow Tactics. So we did our first complete season 2 in the form of Shadow Tactics, Blades of the Shogun, and we folded the Aiko's Choice content into it. Now, the tough thing was the physical edition was on PS4, and there was no physical edition for Aiko's Choice. So we kind of did a hybrid that we did the PS4 content, and then chronologically we inserted the Aiko's Choice expansion, because it does kind of fit in the overarching portion of the game. Now, there's some other things that have not been completed, but they're still kind of interest, and it's just because they're such either long titles or we just had too much going on that some have been put on the back burner. So Metal Slug Attack Reloaded, we'd put a lot of time into in 24 and beginning 25, and it's kind of just become a redundant title, and I'm kind of disappointed that the developer has not put out new content for it yet. So there's still more content to unlock, but, it might be a filler title. Another one that's kind of tough is Oblivion. It was amazing to see that there was a remake of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion come out, and we did put a few hours into that, but that's a never-ending game for the most part, so it wasn't really quite a high priority, and kind of got stuck. They reached a point over the summer where streaming better part of 100 hours a month, and it reached the point that there was some serious burnout, so we've had to scale some things back and take a couple things out of the schedule for the time being for sanity reasons. And another one that was of interest, but a little bit more frustrating on the difficulty side, was Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, but again, I think just with saturation of how much we had going on. So before I get to the ongoing, there was a couple stinkers out there. I was really looking forward to Deliver at All Costs. I thought it'd be kind of fun to get I thought it was going to be a little bit more of an open world driving kind of game. It's a comedy game, but its visuals were kind of lackluster, but not as much as the mechanics were just goofy, because it had a fixed camera as you're driving the car around. The car would be facing one way, but your brain says, I want to steer the other way. And that's part of the element of the game, is to make it challenging while you're hauling balloons and safes and, statues covered in bird crap, across town. So it's part of the thing, but it wasn't really as fun as it could have been. And also true we tried Just Cause 3 to try to get an open world element in there. And after a few episodes, I think we got through about 10 plus on that one. it just got really, really repetitive, and there was this huge difficulty spikes to accomplish certain things that were necessary, and it reached the point of like, you know what, it's not fun. It's the we had barely cracked the surface of just how much content there was. So to keep going through the same repetitive tasks for hours on end, it just seemed like that's probably a title we're not likely to come back to. But that leaves what we have currently going right now. So we actually have two season twos running along with an extension of Tomb Raider. So Mech Warrior was our longest running series thus far. I think we did about 80 episodes on our first playthrough. It seemed like we wouldn't be coming back to anytime soon. But credit to the developer, they made new content, and not to mention, since we didn't quite get through all of the prior release content, I was actually like, you know what, I can get back into some MechWarrior 5. So we've kind of got that going on right now. And also, Metal Slug Tactics was an interesting story because we didn't have the physical edition off the start. It took a year to get the physical edition, and so we were playing the digital one, and we were this close to being finished with the game, and then it glitched out and lost all the content. And so I was like, you know what, we're going to set that aside, wait till the physical edition comes in, and then we've resumed that. So we're working on Metal Slug Tactics going here into 2026. And also, you know, as is the trend with physical copies these days, Tomb Raider Remastered for the games 4, 5, and 6. We now have the physical edition. We've started that. We're only a few episodes in, but that will be ongoing into 2026 as well. So right now we've only got about 3 active titles with a little bit of other stuff thrown in, but that's like a huge chunk of content. You know, just to have all that going on since 2025. So it'll be fun to mix that up and see some other things going on there. Um, we didn't have as many episodes this year, or at least I had originally tried to get these going more frequently, but we got at least a few episodes of Last LAN Standing in this year. We got a couple of episodes of Frontlines. Now, prior we'd actually tried Section 8. We've only done one episode of Section 8 so far, but I think because of the clunkiness of the game and because of competitive elements, it did not necessarily go over as well as I would have hoped. So I don't know how much will come back to Section 8. I definitely think that Frontlines has been popular along with Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, and there may be a couple other titles that we can still mix in. But again, these are extensively based on a lot of setup here in studio and guest schedules and a lot of coordination to make sure we have a certain number of people. Because especially for these larger titles, I don't like to go live with less than 6 players because you have these large maps, and if you don't have any kind of bot support, it's not as enjoyable. So I greatly appreciate the support that we've had from all of our guests that have made these happen over the last couple of years, because it would not happen without them. Yeah, I can't play these by myself and still create an entertaining experience. So our guests get all the credit for that. And also, we got one episode of Cooperative Laboratory in this year. So we finally got around to doing some Mercenaries mode on Resident Evil 5. Thanks to Call to Stealth hanging out for that. And I know things are set up for that, and I should be able to do more of those, but with everything going on, we'll see. This is really play by ear kind of experience for these. Uh, then, so here's the big stuff for 2025. So all we had was streaming and content, and you know the release of Ascendant Chaos coming out of 24. Finally, now that we had a physical product, I'm like, you know what? Got to work on the ground game. So because Amazon doesn't do a whole lot for you in terms of promoting book content, I figured try my hand at doing what I ultimately want to do is get toward Comic Con like events, and it's been a very very mixed experience, and in some cases we've done really well. That we had a lot of sales in certain venues, and others we had absolutely zero, and they were expensive or awful. And so I'll probably break some of this stuff down in more detail over the future because you can easily get bogged down in details and numbers, but that's not the point as much as it's just kind of cool that it worked out that for 2025, you actually had 25 full shows on the calendar. Some of them were small hole in the wall things, some were large art and craft fairs, and even got into a couple Comic Con related events. So it was pretty awesome. I mean, I'm even shocked that I actually managed to get 25 prints either from a nigh complete state or partially done. And so by the time we got done for this year, I've got 25 prints available for the art side of things, and some of those were even done start to scratch in or start to finish, scratch to finish, I don't know, whatever. In within 25, so that was cool. Now, not a lot of other products moved. I mean, the highest thing was probably books, and then secondary was probably Fiji collectibles from the Aladdin 3477 movie, and then after that, maybe prints. So there's definitely a lot of room for growth, but it's been an interesting year with a lot of new experiences. So I'll probably talk about that a little bit more later on. So to continue that idea of 25s and 25, we ended up selling 50 copies across all those shows. So, of course, in some cases more, some cases less, but the average to a show is just phenomenal, especially without having any kind of publisher or marketing stuff. I mean, so thank you to everybody who has picked one up over the last year. Um, so it's hard to know whether that seems like that's amazing or not. I mean, because it has involved so much work of getting in front of people, but it goes to show that if you're making connections with people, there's a lot more room for opportunity than there is if you're just hiding out, in a bunker somewhere. So it has made a huge difference with being out there and talking to everybody. So thank you everybody who has stopped by, said hello, made purchases, and so on. So that has been a big deal, and that's one of the highlights of 25. And there's gonna be more to come in that department, I'm sure, for 26. Yes, speaking of which, so what's still on the horizon here? So I've kind of projected forward. I've been a little bit more ambitious in New Year's recaps past. But there's a lot of unknowns, so I'll start with the unknown first. I don't know what's going to happen from a work schedule or an employment schedule standpoint going into 25, or I'm sorry, going out of 25 into 26. So I don't know, but the priority number one element, which is still around the corner, is getting book two published. So got the first draft done. Has already been accumulated over 800 pages. So, and there's still a little bit more to do, but I've done a full draft rewrite. I'm in the middle of proofing, and so some other content that's got to go into that. Got to get the cover done. So those are the major elements. But if I don't have a burden schedule, I mean, we're looking at maybe a couple months. If a employment schedule changes things, that could be slowed down a bit. And what's going to happen with shows? So even though we did 25 shows last year, there was a huge challenge of getting to some of those because of the registration costs being so high. And now that we've seen that some shows are advantageous and some are not, I can actually be a little bit more selective. So we're probably going to go to the shows where we've had some contacts with people, and those that have done virtually nothing, even if they're free, well, that time is going to be better spent working on other projects. So I don't know how many shows we're going to do yet. We've got at least half a dozen to 10 on the calendar already for 26, but they don't start until end of February. But can anticipate there will be more. So usually that is the best way to get a signed copy of Ascendant Chaos or get prints. So those are going to be the two focal points, and then everything else is kind of unknown. I've obviously kind of overcommitted and tried to get our fighting game brand up and running, but that has not taken priority. So I don't want to overpromise because I've already been at it for a couple years. But we have done a little bit more, at least this year, with the unboxing videos. So it's hard to say. I mean, there is no doubt a full-time schedule here, but unfortunately, reality has to have its say, and so there's going to be some certain financial things that are going to need to be met. And I got to say that part of the show thing would not have been possible this year without some of the sponsorship for getting to the shows. So I want to express my greatest appreciation for those who helped make that happen, because otherwise it's really tough that in order to market something, you kind of need the money to do it. If you don't have the money to do it, well, you got to do it in person. Well, it's crazy that all these shows, well, in order to meet somebody in person, you're still paying to be there. And in many cases, you may or may not be able to break even to do so. So it has been an uphill battle, but hey, we're coming up on year 3 and we are still in it, and we're still climbing this virtual Mount Everest of things. So I think that's it. What we got here? Yep. So this is it. So thank you to everybody who's watched, shared things out, participated, chat, comment, all the above. And so one of the things that'll probably be a newer idea coming into 2026. So rather than just being the vicarious mercenaries and proxy ninjas, I definitely want our community to have like a name. So as of right now, I'm going to go forward with the whole concept of shock troops, because that's you guys, for being here from the beginning, or at least the earliest stages of what is still going to be a long journey to come. and it's been fun. So there's still some challenges, but I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I've enjoyed those of you I've met and those who participated. So thank you. So I hope you have a fantastic 26 and stay tuned. Rec Room will still be doing its thing coming up, and that's usually the best way to get the updates. So until then, Happy New Year.